Got it. Perfect. So we will go ahead and get started. We're going to dive on in. First off, we're going to do some welcome and some introductions. Then we're going to move into some program information, and we've got our fabulous faculty here to share information with you all today. We're going to have some time at the end to cover a little bit about kind of what your next steps might be. So if you're interested, planning to come to RCC, what's next? So I'll share with you how that process works. Q&A is listed on the agenda at the end, but really question and answers come throughout. So at any point, if we're talking about something and you're curious, please ask the question. You don't have to sit on it to the end. It's totally fine to ask it in the moment. I have the closed captioning up here just as a reminder to let you all know that you can turn on the live transcript in Zoom. So if it's helpful for you to have the text on your screen, you should see that option to turn it on and off along your toolbar. And we've already mentioned that the session is being recorded. So before we dive in and talk about who we have in our Zoom meeting today, Maggie Murray is the Director of Student Life and Athletics, and she wanted to share a brief welcome message with you guys. So I'm going to share this video. Let me make sure that I have shared my audio. I did not, so let me try it one more time. You should hear her voice. If you don't, please stop me immediately, but let's listen to Maggie.
What's happening, everybody? Are y'all so excited about your day today with RCC? You should be. Let me just tell you that RCC is awesome, best community college in the land. And I got another thing to say. You're going to learn a ton about different programs today, or the program that you're interested in. But college is not all about being in the classroom. It's also being about around campus, meeting different people, getting involved in clubs or sports. So at RCC, we have a lot going on campus. So go to class, and then we got awesome places for you to hang out. We also have some awesome programs for you to be a part of, and 11 clubs for you to be a part of. So get excited about your program today, yes, but also you get excited about just being an Eagle and being a part of RCC's campus. So enjoy your time today. My name is Maggie Murray. I'm the Director of Student Life and Athletics, and we can't wait to have you on campus.
Yay. So as a student at RCC, you'll see a lot of emails from Student Life and from Maggie Murray. She coordinates a lot of that for us, and there's a ton of fun stuff going on. So it's a lot about academics, and we're going to learn a lot about that today, but then it's also about your experience of meeting new people and, just having that college life experience. So we're glad that Maggie is coordinating all that for us. Before we do our introductions, I just want to mention, so I don't forget, if you're new to Zoom, there's a couple different ways that you can view the session. I would recommend speaker view. So you should be able along your toolbar to change how you're viewing all of our faces. You can see it in the Brady Bunch view, which is cool to see lots of faces. But for what we're doing when we're going to be sharing our screen and Dr. Wade's going to share some cool stuff with you, it's easier to see it if you're looking just at the speaker. So just keep that in mind. You can change that along the toolbar. Perfect. So my name is Laura Jennings. I'm the Assistant Director of Enrollment Services. So I help students on the front end along the admissions track. So getting you to the point where you're in the program. In our call today, we also have Vicki Chitwood, who's the Dean of Health Sciences and Public Services. We have Ken Hux, who's going to share some information in just a little bit. And then we have Dr. Wade, Dr. Ann Wade as well, who's going to be sharing some cool stuff with you. So we've got a lot of great information, and these are the best resources you have. So I hope that you will ask questions today. I'll keep an eye on the chat box. Even when they're talking, if you have a question, we can always chime in that way. Perfect, but super glad for everybody being here. And thank you to faculty for joining the session and leading the next part for us. Fabulous. So next piece, if you'll, as we're going, so before we turn over to Mr. Hux, if you'll just let us know in the chat box, You've already hopefully introduced yourself, but if you'll also let us know, what is it about criminal justice that you're interested in? So what brought you to our session today? Are there certain areas that you're interested in, things that you want to make sure that we hit on or talk about? And the next couple minutes, if you'll throw that into the chat box so that we can be sure to cover that for you today. Cool. All right. So I am going to turn it over to Mr. Hux. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that he can share his screen. Perfect.
We're so excited to have you here today to talk about the Criminal Justice Technology Program. Thank you for being here. We have a lot to discuss, a lot to get through. I'm going to talk about the classes you're going to be taking. I'm going to talk about some of the other things that are involved in the program that we're excited about, and we hope that you're going to get excited about too, because this is a fun curriculum, and we have so many people already working in the field. So it's not just about the classes that you're taking, it's about somewhere you may want to go down the road in the future. So glad that you're here. And also, Dr. Wade, I'll introduce you to her. She's going to be upstairs and show you some of the toys that we use in our CSI classes and our investigative principle classes. And so, Dr. Wade, if you want to say hello.
Hi, I can't wait to show you some of the tools that we use in criminal investigations, our CSI part of the program. So there's a lot of things that you'll be doing that'll be hands-on if you enter the program. And we'll teach you the behind the scenes, all the different ways that investigators work with the folks who are CSIs. So we'll debunk a little bit about what goes on TV, but I'll show you some of the real deal. So I look forward to that.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Wade. I did a video sometime back, and rather than reinvent the wheel, I figured I might as well go ahead and show you that. Now, don't panic. It's only about 5 minutes, but it does talk about the program. And then anything that I don't touch on or anything you have questions about, I'm going to fill in some of the blanks, but I also want you to give us your input. What do you want to hear from us? What can we do to make your experience at RCC a better experience? So as they say in the business, without further ado, I'm going to show you this short video, and it's going to be me talking about the program, and be thinking about any questions or anything like that that may come up when I show you this. So let me see if I can share my screen for this short video. Okay.
Hello, my name is Kenneth Hux. I am the lead instructor here at Rockingham Community College in Criminal Justice Technology. You know, the criminal justice program and criminal justice in general is much more complicated than people think. There are 3 major prongs of the criminal justice system, and they include law enforcement, which we generally think of as police officers.
Can we hear? Can everybody hear? You can? Okay. All right. Thank you. Just want to make sure.
And the job that they do. Then we have the court system, which involves, of course, adjudication of what comes to the court system and applying of evidence and applying of the procedures in the courtroom. And then, of course, we have a third prong, which is corrections, which is the punishment end of things, but it may not be necessarily incarceration. It could include things like probation and parole. And in our program, we talk about all of these things and how valuable all these parts and these different assets are together. When you come here, you'll be taking various different classes, including constitutional law, which includes the U.S. Constitution and North Carolina Constitution and constitutional applications, and criminal law, which includes North Carolina law and federal law. And we try to make it North Carolina specific here. We'll also take other classes like court procedure and evidence, where you do see the court process and the adjudication process and the application of evidence to it. Go through all that. Students enjoy that very much. We also have things like victimology, where we study victimization and victim services and how to be of help to victims. We also have a class in ethics and community relations and community policing, and we get into ethical issues with law enforcement and ethical issues in the criminal justice system, and what we're doing about it currently to modify some of those things to make the criminal justice system better for all. I also include other classes like law enforcement operations, and law enforcement operations includes our hands-on portion where we actually do ride-alongs. You get to do a ride-along with the sheriff's department and the police department. We take our students out to the range and we actually have them fire handguns if they want to do that, if it's available. We teach you safety in that context, and of course, use of force and proper use of force and use of force continuum. We also have our CSI class called Investigative Principles. People enjoy that. That is exactly what you would think it is. It's a criminal scene investigation. In this case, you can get behind the scene of the tape and see what's going on in the crime scene. So one of our students said they really wanted to see what was going on behind the scenes, and they have an opportunity when you get this class to see what really goes on when you do fingerprinting and blood splat analysis, DNA collection, and all of those kinds of things. Students find that very interesting, and that's an extended lab, so you can set up crime scenes and process those crime scenes. We also have classes of criminology, psychology, computer use, and many other things that fill in the gaps for the criminal justice profession. Now, when you come here and complete our program, you can get a 2-year AAS degree, which now we have a pathway to a sister institution and get a 4-year degree. You can get your BA or your BS. And of course, further beyond that, if you wanted to do more in the criminal justice field, you could work on your master's degree at another institution and maybe even go to law school if you wanted to be an attorney or a prosecutor. That is always possible. Also, we have a BLET program. If you wanted to be a police officer, you can come to basic law enforcement training here at RCC. It's a different division, but it's something that you can take and get certified as a law enforcement officer and a sworn officer and work as a police officer in the state of North Carolina. Now, it is very rewarding as an instructor to see our students out in the field doing these jobs, being deputy sheriffs, being police officers, being correctional officers, probation, parole, victim services people, being counselors, court counselors. It is very, very fulfilling to see them do that. The students enjoy those jobs that they have. And we have very many graduates who are very fulfilled in what they do due to their 2-year degree. We would encourage you to come and get your 2-year degree in criminal justice technology. And we have many other avenues that you can pursue. The sky's the limit when pursuing this degree here at RCC. And remember, we look forward to seeing you here. We see you participate in the criminal justice program, get that degree under your belt, maybe pursue other avenues. And remember, here at RCC, start local, but go far.
Okay. All right. So that makes sense. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about that? And we're going to try to fill in some of the blanks if you do have questions. Any comments? I guess the next thing I'll do is go through our course sequence and show you some of the other courses you'll actually be taking. And so let me share the screen with that one and give you that take on what our actual courses are going to look like and the courses that you're going to be taking other than the ones that I've just discussed. You may have some questions with this. Okay. I hope everybody's able to see this. Generally speaking, you'll start with an introduction to criminal justice. It's not always necessary, but of course it makes sense. You'll be doing criminology along with that, sort of associated in some ways, but it also talks about studying things like sociopath and the mental mindset of criminals and why criminals do what they do. And of course, then you have the profilers and all that kind of stuff that fits into that. Community policing, the next class, of course, talks about policing in the community and how police and community relations work together. And of course, that's more important probably than ever these days, as we all know by watching the news. Criminal law, I mentioned here, is we like to focus on North Carolina law in most cases because that's the most relevant thing, but we also look at some at federal law. Of course, you'll be taking your English 111. Second semester, we do have the ACA 122, College Transfer Success. It's just a 1-hour class, but it will get you ready to do things like transfer to a 4-year college, things like maybe if you want to go into the workplace, do a resume, those kinds of things and those kinds of skills. We do introduce you to the computers with the CIS 110, give you a little more background. A lot of people know how to do gaming and they know how to do social media, but this kind of gives you another step up into the world of computers, which of course is very, very important these days. Obviously, you can't work too many places without having some kind of relationship with a computer. Juvenile justice is next is CJC 113. You learn a different language. You learn about the juvenile justice system. It's a totally different language. It's a totally different system. And so that's another important course. Some of you may want to be juvenile justice professionals. You may want to work with youths. Sometimes we have students that really, really prefer working with the younger people. And so there's an opportunity to learn that take on criminal justice. 132 is our court procedure and evidence. And we focus a lot on how the court does what it does, as I said, processes, and then the application of evidence in the courtroom setting. I mentioned 141 corrections. That's a class that some students really enjoy. It's also another take on that third branch of criminal justice, that of what happens after you get adjudicated to be guilty in the system. English 112 will finish up your second semester in your first year of English. Then the next year, you'll look at law enforcement operations. Now, you don't always have to follow these exact sequences. This is the model sequence that we have found works probably best if you can stick to this. But sometimes schedules don't permit students to follow necessarily in these sequences, and that's okay too. We will work with you to make the schedule that's best for you at the time. People work, people have families, but this is the suggested sequence of courses, and we will try to stick as close to this as is reasonable for your schedule, because we do want to work with you. Law enforcement operations, I mentioned, is one of the classes where we kind of do a little bit more hands-on things. Substance abuse, kind of self-explanatory, talking about drug laws and substances and the take on that. We sometimes bring in undercover officers and talk about different things. I have had canines come in before and talk about how canine officers do their job when you're talking about drugs and drug bust. Investigative principles is that class at 221. It gets you behind the tape, behind the crime scene tape. Everybody wants to know what goes on behind there. Some people really enjoy this. Of course, it's not for everybody's cup of tea, but for most students, they really, really enjoy this class. And you'll notice on the right-hand side, it's a 4-hour class. You spend part of the class developing the crime scene and spending time in the book, learning what you need to know. And then you spend another large portion of the class in the lab setting where you're actually doing, as I said, alluded to in the video, you're actually processing a crime scene and going through as if you were at a real crime scene. And of course, we do bring in real crime scenes and videos and those kinds of things. So students enjoy that. Constitutional law gives you a background in what's constitutional and what isn't. It seems to be more and more important these days also. You'll get a chance to do public speaking, Com 231. And then as you finish up, we do have a block on ethics and community relations and organization administration for those of you who would like to go further and want to do administration in law enforcement or administration in any kind of criminal justice field. 214 is that victimology we talked about. Do you want to do victim services? Some people find a real niche in there, and we have several graduates from the program that are in that field, assisting victims after they have been victimized, I guess you could say. General psychology kind of ties it all together. It obviously goes along with those other criminal justice classes that are here. There is a fine arts elective. You have to take 3 hours of this, and we'll talk about that when we meet with you. Music, humanities, maybe an art class. You do have to do a math here. Math 143 is what we usually suggest. And then I would note as we're going into, we mentioned basic law enforcement training, when you're talking to your advisors, myself, or whoever it might be, Dr. Wade, if you're interested in going through our basic law enforcement training program, you can already pick up some of these credits. And here are the credits that you can get for going through the BLET program, 121, 131, 132, 221, and 231. Don't want to get too far ahead of where we are now, but just keep that in mind. So you can get some of this 2-year credit just by attending basic law enforcement training. And we will advise you on that when we start talking about classes that you want to select and the things that you want to do with your career. I'm going to stop sharing now and come back to any questions, any comments? Sometimes I get so fast in class and the students go, I had a question about 10 minutes ago, Mr. Hicks, you ran right over top of me. We'll set aside some time at the end of the class if you do think of something or you come up with something, and Dr. Wade and I will try to answer all your questions that you may have and you may not have formed them yet. Our program is transferable to the 4-year school, as I mentioned. We also have academy that's just beginning at Rockingham County High School. Some of you may even be interested in that or may be in that academy. That will be 4 classes to get a certificate. And so we're really excited about that. We're going to have a presence at the Rockingham County High School this fall for the first time. And you may want to maybe already part of that, maybe involved with that. Let's see. Dr. Wade, is there anything you want to fill us in on? Any other questions? Any other comments? I'm sure we left off some things, but just keep those questions and ask us at the end of the class, at the end of this presentation, and we'll be happy to. Also, if you need to contact us, we will give you our contact information after the class. A lot of times students don't necessarily want to speak up or don't feel like their questions necessarily for the entire group. Do not hesitate to contact myself or Dr. Wade for any kind of assistance. You can call us here at RCC, you can email us, and we will make every effort to get you any kind of assistance we can provide to help you with your criminal justice class or any other thing that you might want to pursue at RCC. If you decide that criminal justice is not necessarily your bent, sometimes that happens, we can point you in the right direction for that. So I think I've said enough. You're probably tired of listening to me. I'm going to shoot you upstairs to Dr. Wade and her crime scene lab, and you're going to get a little bit of taste of the CSI from the expert herself. So Dr. Wade, thank you.
Really, a lot of you had expressed an interest in being highway patrol, working with juveniles, being a detective. All of those things are covered, but I think it's important that you know what really goes on behind the scenes. You've probably seen an episode or 2 of CSI, and you see how quickly they can solve a crime in 50 minutes, minus a few commercials, and they have everything all wrapped up. DNA is in there. Let me debunk a couple of things. One, there are people who work in the field as CSIs that are not sworn law enforcement. So they're not detectives. They're actually the people who process the crime scene evidence. Then they work with the detective to tell them what they found. Versus who did it, they're giving that information. Then there's a third person or group involved when it goes to the CSI lab. So many of the shows have consolidated that into one individual, but in reality, it's 3. And those are 3 very different specific jobs. So I want to kind of work through that and let you know, because one may fit, another one may not. A couple of you said forensic science, and forensic science is lab work. So you're processing DNA. You're in a white coat in a lab working with pipettes and doing science things. That's a great job. And we certainly can help you get there from here once you learn about the CJ system. Others of you want to be more hands-on, out in the field, literally in a field, sometimes in a home, sometimes, in the woods, seeing what's out there, discovering the evidence, maybe even processing a body. So that's a whole other field. And then the detective comes in at the end and does the interviews and wraps it all up. But it always starts with, or almost always starts with, that 911 phone call. Help, someone's being murdered. Help, someone, I found a body. Help, I don't know what this is. Is this a body part? So there's some things like that start. There are people who actually sit and analyze 911 phone calls to see, maybe, is this the person who did it, or is this an innocent bystander who's called it in? So the first officer on the scene is dispatched to the scene. He or she goes there, and we tell them, law enforcement, we need you to look with your eyes as you roll up. So let's just say it's a dead body in a house. We don't know if it's a homicide or not. We don't know what the cause of death, the COD, is. We've got to wait on a medical professional to come in and tell us that. So the body in North Carolina is going to go to a medical examiner's office, and they're going to come back and give us that COD. In the meantime, we're going to send somebody out, a CSI, an evidence tag, to collect that evidence. Now, some scenes are more obvious than others. It's not a heart attack if you see blood everywhere. But I hear people say there's blood everywhere and there's a little pool of blood. So there's a difference in how we talk about it and how the average person might talk about it. So the officer comes in, he looks, he finds the body, he sees the person is deceased, he backs out. He leaves the scene. Don't touch anything, don't look for anything, don't mess up the scene. The CSI comes in, and the first thing they do is protect themselves. So you see my great purple gloves here. I'm also going to walk you over to some other things that we would put on. One, if it's wet, warm, and sticky, and it's not yours, you don't want it on you. So you want gloves, because you may pick up something and have something splash in your eye. We don't want to spend hours in the emergency room identifying what that is. The other thing you're going to want to put on is some sort of, I know you've all seen the masks before and we're all wearing them, but this can be a filtration mask. There are other types of masks that can be used, especially if the body has been there a while. Just saying that there are some rebreather masks that you may want to wear. It doesn't smell good. The other thing is that going into a scene, you want to make sure that you have on the proper clothing. And so, as you can see, this is white, and it's a type of plastic. Now, the most common fiber in the world is white cotton. So this is white, but it's not cotton. So we're going to put on this. We have booties that go on. You don't want to leave your footprint anywhere. You don't want to leave your fingerprints. The one thing you probably noticed, if you brush your hair, you look at the hairbrush or you look at the comb every once in a while and you go, oh my gosh, look at all these hairs. We shed hairs. We shed over 100 a day. So we don't think about that when we're pulling a hair off here and here. But anyone who commits a crime, they always leave something and they always take something with them. Your job is to figure out what they left and what they took. And I don't mean steal something, but I mean they took a piece of the room with them. They didn't mean to, but I've got a cat, I've got 4 dogs. It's shedding season right now. If you have pets, you know, the warmer it gets, the more they shed. So just walking through every once in a while, I'm going, oh, look, there's the cat, there's the dog. That's what the perpetrator can take with them. And so when we are interviewing them, the detective is interviewing them. If you're good at your job, you've already told the detective, there's hair there. You've collected some of that hair. You've collected animal hair. So you want to have a real good idea of what is at the crime scene. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to take pictures. And we always tell, look up, look down. Gravity is your friend, but blood can go up and it can pepper the ceiling. It can be down on the floor. It can be under things. Then you're going to do a crime scene sketch. So you're going to come over, and these are some of the sketches that our students have done over the years. You want to be able to give a jury, if it goes to trial, a really good bird's eye view of what this room or this house looked like and the measurements. When done properly, if you needed to reconstruct a crime scene in a room, you could. You could put the furniture back, you could put stuff down for the blood, you could put whatever you need to put there so that the jury could see exactly what happened. You'll have your pictures, you will have your crime scene sketch, which gives you all the different measurements, and it shows the heading, the diagram area, a legend, and a little bit about what you found there. So this is really an important part of it. And people think, well, I didn't see that on TV. Well, it's the guy with the clipboard who's standing in the back. You see 1 or 2 pictures taken. We will teach you how to take the proper pictures at a crime scene. It's not go in, click, there's the body. It's very methodical. We start left to right. We do a baseline. We do the ceiling. We do there. And if we need to crawl under something, we crawl under something. So now we're going to look for weapons. So maybe the body's been taken away. We're going to look for anything that might have blood on it. And of course, if we've got a weapon like this, we do have props. I'm sorry, not to be offensive, but we've got props. And so we can see that there's blood here. We can pull, we were not going to pull the knife out, but we can see this knife. Now, one of the things that we talk about, though, is if this knife were not present, our medical examiner is also going to make a mold or look at the wound, the entrance to the wound, and be able to tell us a little bit about what we're looking for. And so we're going to collect anything here at the scene. This obviously has blood on it, so that's going to be collected. We're going to look inside, and anywhere inside, like I said, anything that potentially could be evidence is going to get a marker, because we're going to take another picture of it very close range, very, very close. And so if it's physical evidence, it gets a letter. If it's biological, remember I said wet, warm, or sticky, it's going to get a number. So there are times when you see a pool of something and you don't know what it is. One of our cold cases, a group of us for cold cases, we were looking at something and everybody couldn't figure out what it was. And it was kind of light and yellow. It looked like urine. Finally, somebody said, oh, does the guy have a cat? And we looked, and sure enough, there was a cat. The cat had wet in the floor. They're collecting it like it's evidence of the day, and it really wasn't. So, you know, you have to look around, be aware of pets, be aware of things there. If you don't know what it is, mark it. If there's evidence outside, you're going to put a flag on it. You're going to mark it. And so, yeah, there's evidence that we're always looking for what they're looking for in CSI. You know, you want to see a knife, you want to see a gun. There was a man who was killed by a woman in high heels. Her stiletto heel actually hit him in the forehead. And when she pulled it out, put it back on her foot, and kept going. And so he had this wound. It wasn't a bullet wound. They're trying to figure out what it was. And it took a while, but after it was poured and they looked at it, they said, huh, that looks like the heel mark. They go to the suspect's house. They look at her shoes. They're able to run DNA from her shoe heel, and they're able to catch a killer. Some people have been known to stab others with ice, actually made into a dagger. Hey, your murder weapon melts. So these are not really good, you know, these are weird examples, but they're examples. Then you're going to process your evidence. So we're going to make sure that we've marked it. We know how long it is. We've done our crime scene measurement. And so we're going to come back, and of course I'm going to collect this glass, but it's got a fingerprint and it's in blood. So I'm going to photograph that. I'm not going to try to raise it with any of the things like our fingerprint powders or our brushes, but I'm going to photograph that. Get a real good print off of that so that I can run it. Now you'll learn how to do fingerprint. And so I pre-did this one because someone has touched it. We've used a brush, we've used black powder, black silk powder. All you have to do is shake it, it goes everywhere. Now we're going to raise the print by making circular moves. Then we're going to preserve the print. So the first thing I'm going to do is photograph it, just in case I mess up listing.
So I want to have that. I still run it through that way. But the goal is to get it on tape and get it onto what we call a lift card. And so the lift card is going to be one that has white or black. Now think about this. Which one do you want to put the print on? So you want to be able to see it. So it's going to go on the white lift card. And so most lift cards have that black and white. And you say, well, gosh, why would you have a black lift card? Why in the world? Well, what if your backing that you're lifting something off of is black? Well, we have fingerprint colors. So we've got forensic colors. So if it's on a table that's black, you don't want to use black powder. You want to use one of the fancy colors. So it's important to get the fingerprints done. We still live and die by fingerprint evidence. Everything on TV talks about DNA. Well, you may or may not have DNA. As fast as we shed our hair, we shed our skin, but you may not be able to see that. So you may not be finding the DNA. So when we do find things, and we are going to use different types of alternate light sources in order to find anything, and again, wet, warm, or sticky, that's not yours. And so we're going to be looking for those fluids. Now we're going to collect them. Now, the one thing we don't want to do is to put things that can degrade in plastic. Now, unlike CSI, crimes are not solved in 50 minutes or an hour. I have the pleasure of working with the group for cold case. Most of our cases are 10, 15, 20 years old. Our oldest one is 40 years old. Well, we think we have that one solved. So when the guy has retired to Florida, and every time they ask him about it, he gets irritated and says, why do you want to know about that old thing? So we think that he is going to be arrested. He's in his 80s. Do I feel bad about arresting him in his 80s? Not at all. So we talk about cold cases and how they're worked a little different from this. But if you have something that you want to take a sample of, you've got several ways you can do it, but you want to make sure that it's preserved in a way that it can food or something that's black. Here's some of my specimens, and they're in there, and they've been lifted from different places, and they're sent to the lab. Now, you're the CSI in the field. You're not going to know what those are. Maybe for 6 weeks, maybe. That's the first ready part. Job. So while we want to make an arrest, we want to get DNA back, in a day. It may take depends on the lab. We're also going to package it as if we are going to send it in use. The guy may have an appeal. We may have the wrong person. And so this has to be stable enough to be collected and preserved and then labeled. And what case does it go with? Put the label on there. Many of the times we will package things in paper bags. Hair can go in paper bags, and then we put an evidence on it so that if it is open, it's properly signed, it's dated, it's documented. Now, the individual walks into the house and say they have a distinctive shoe pattern. So we're going to do several things. If it's out in the mud, we may cast it here. And when we find the perpetrator, we'll have them step into one of the molds in their shoe or take the shoe and put it in there and see if it's a match. Other things may happen. There may be dirt in the house that doesn't look like the dirt that's out and around. So we're going to collect samples of the dirt. And if you've ever seen some of the CSI programs, they can tell you a lot more about dirt than you would ever want to know. Now, I'm the queen of maggots. So I'm still in trouble for putting maggots in some of our scenes, but they're just little bugs. I mean, they're like little teeny worms and they don't bite. They're really kind of cool, actually. I raised my own, and they are, we do trace the life history of maggots, and that tells you a lot about time of death. So it's not always knowing what caused the death. If it's a murder, it's knowing when it happened. And so we back out from weather, we look at the atmosphere, we look at the bug activity, we look at the soil, we look at weather conditions, and then we bag the evidence that's there. And you can see we have some hair bagged here. So you might say, well, what if it snows? You know, you're not going to get really good footprints there. Oh yeah, there's a product for everything. So, you know, it's like we can get a snow cast. If we can find it, we're going to take a picture, we're going to get a snowcast of it. And so we can preserve tire tracks. We can preserve footprints, handprints that may be on the ground in the mud. So all of these are ways that we preserve. We also teach a little bit about blood spatter patterns. There's no L in that word other than in blood, but blood spatter patterns. And so there are years worth of study on how to determine the spatter pattern and where blood comes from. And so we look at that, we do experiments, we do and then we experiment with it. So I've got all sorts of props, all sorts of things. We set up crime scenes, we let you investigate, and we tell you how to do things. So this will open your eyes to the world of CSI and how different it is in real life than it is in all the TV programs. Certainly, if you have any questions, I will put my email in the chat box. So feel free to ask me any questions, send me an email. I'm happy to answer anything I can do. Thank y'all, and I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Huggs.
Thank you, Ann. That was wonderful. We usually find students either really, really love the CSI stuff or they really, really don't love the CSI stuff. Don't worry if you fall in either one of those categories. It's just a class that you have to take. But if you find that very interesting and something that you're excited about, then there are other avenues you can pursue. I talked a little bit about BLET a while ago, and we do have a video that I want Laura to play for us there. If you're interested in doing some of the CSI stuff, maybe you want to be a police officer, maybe you don't want to be a police officer. Well, that's okay. We're going to give you the opportunity. If that's what you want to do, you may find out, like I said, once you get into it, that that's not necessarily your cup of tea. But we do want to give you an opportunity to do that if that's what you would like to pursue. So let's see the video on our BLET program, Basic Law Enforcement Training.
My name is Jim Gunn. I'm the BLET school director here at Rockingham Community College. The BLET program is comprised of 36 topical areas, and law enforcement job training is one of those topical areas. Within that block of instruction, the students are taught not only the proper operation of a police vehicle, but also how to recognize and how to maneuver that vehicle under different weather conditions, also in different traffic. Also, they're taught and talked to on how to make the appropriate decision when to do a vehicle pursuit. And it's not just something in that outline. When you're talking a vehicle pursuit, you've had motor vehicle laws, and you've had use of force and laws of arrest, search, and seizure. All of that starts building into what they'll get in this topical outline when they start talking about all the contributions that may lead up to a vehicle pursuit. And then of course, you've got to learn how to maneuver and handle these vehicles. These vehicles are not your standard vehicle. It's what we call a police package on these vehicles, and these are the 4 vehicles we're using predominantly here are former highway patrol vehicles, Dodge Chargers, and they have an enhanced package in them that is, the axles are a little heavier duty, the engines are a little bit more powerful. It's when you order these vehicles, it's a police package that you order from the dealership or from the companies. The basic law enforcement training class provides the individual, the student, as long as they pass the state certification exam at the end, they then can go and get a job as a law enforcement officer in the state of North Carolina.
Awesome. Awesome. Great video. Perfect. Are there, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Hux if he has anything else that he wants to share here.
Well, we'd like to hear from you. What do you have for us? What are you interested in? What kind of turns you on as a student? How can we make the program fit what you want it to be? Any questions, comments? Again?
I noticed there's been a lot of conversation in the chat box, and Ms. Jennings has been answering those questions. Thank you, Ms. Jennings, for that. And Ann's been answering some of the questions. Ken, could you tell them about, if you do BLET, you have to be 21, but if you do that program, you do get credit for some criminal justice classes. So could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we went through course sequence. I don't know if you remember at the very bottom, we listed those classes, but you can get credit for 6 classes taking BLET. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind. If you do want to pursue basic law enforcement training, and I keep saying BLET, forgetting that people don't necessarily know what that is. What's BLET or BLET? But basic law enforcement training, if you know that that's what you want to do when you come to our program, we will angle you or point you in the right direction so that you can not take those classes up front. If you take them up front, that's fine. But if you don't want to necessarily do that, you can get that credit as you take your BLET classes. And so that's constitutional law, criminal investigations, law enforcement operations, criminal law, and a couple of other ones. I'm not, what were those other two, Ann? It's on the list. So you get those credit hours through going through BLET, because obviously you're in classroom for those same topic areas. Anything else? I see someone wanted to know how long BLET was, the basic law enforcement training. It varies, but the state mandates about 640 hours. So it's about 6 months. And depending on, we run a school in the daytime that runs roughly from 8 to 5 days a week. And then we run a school at night that runs 6 to 10. So some people may want to work. Some people already may be employed by an agency and want to come to the night school. So every fall we run a day school, and then in spring we run a night school. So you'll have an opportunity to do both, but they're roughly both about 6 months, with Saturdays, coming to class on Saturdays. Any other questions about that? You may have some that come up a little bit later.
Well, while they're brainstorming, I'll go ahead and share a little bit about the admissions process. And if you do have questions, you can throw them in the chat and we will absolutely circle back to that. You guys have had some great questions already in the chat box. We really appreciate that. Awesome. So if you're to the point where you're wondering, how do I enroll? It was really neat to see all the cool things that Dr. Wade has up there and they're working on in their classes. So I really appreciate her showing that off for us today. So the first step is always to apply to RCC. That's on our app or on our website, and I'll show you that in just a moment. We encourage all students to submit the FAFSA, so file for financial aid. A lot of our students are receiving free money to come to college. So if you're worried about how you're going to pay for college, submit the FAFSA so we can work with you. So hopefully you can hear back and get good news that you might get some free money for school. You meet with an admissions counselor like myself. I see Derek Satterfield is on the call now, so Derek as well. You attend orientation, very similar to what we're doing here, but we give you a lot more information about starting your classes at RCC, and then you take your classes. So just to show you what this looks like, on our website at the top corner is the apply button. So regardless of if you're starting off, if you're graduating high school, or maybe you've graduated high school, have your GED, wherever you are, or maybe you're still in high school, you still apply online right here. So you complete the residency application, which is just the state of North Carolina, determining if you're in state or out of state for tuition purposes. You complete the RCC application, which is applying to the college. And then you schedule a time to chat with us in admission. So it could be a phone call, a Zoom meeting. You pick a time so that it works for your schedule. And that way we have a block of time where we can answer your questions and make sure that we have you on the right track for your next steps. So this fall at RCC, we're excited to be offering on-campus classes, online classes. There's a lot of flexibility. And with the criminal justice program, they offer a variety of courses as well. So we've already mentioned, and there has been a lot of chat in the chat box about CCP, or Career and College Promise classes for this pathway. What a great plan to get started while you're still in high school. So I commend you all who are already thinking about that. Awesome way to get your feet wet with criminal justice, to learn more, and to get some college credit to really help you out once you graduate. Awesome. So I know we've been asking for questions along the way, so you might have gotten them answered. While you're thinking of questions, so if you have any for us, please ask them out loud or in the chat box. But in the meantime, I'm going to put a form in the chat. If you will please fill this out to let us know what t-shirt size you would like. We are so grateful that you attended today and that you were here to learn more information about the program. So we want to make sure that we know how to get you that RCC t-shirt. So if you'll fill this out, and then of course, put any questions in the chat box in the next couple minutes if you have anything. Awesome. Good deal. And once you fill out the form, if you don't have any questions, we want to respect your time. So you're welcome to log off. Again, thank you for coming today. It's been really great to hear about the program, talk with faculty, see the cool things that they do in these classes. At any point, like Mr. Heck said, if you have questions and want to get in touch with us, please do. We are here to help. Before I sign us off, though, I do see a question in the chat box. If we're planning on going to RCC, do we have to live on campus or do we live off site? So RCC is non-residential, so we don't have student housing on campus, so you would live off campus. Great question. Good, good, good. Perfect. Yeah, great question. Anybody else need that link? Did you find it in the chat box? Definitely want to make sure you get that free t-shirt. Perfect. Awesome. Well, you're filling out the form. Once you submit that, like I said, we'll wrap things up officially. So you're welcome to sign off. Thank you for coming. Have a fantastic evening. We'll stay on the line for a little bit. So if you have a question and want to ask, I'll go ahead and turn our recording off so that we are officially done, and feel free to ask away. Perfect.